Hello, humane marketers. Sarah Znekrocha here. Welcome to another episode of the Humane Marketing Podcast, a place to be for the generation of marketers who cares. This is the show where we talk about marketing your business in a way that feels good to you, is aligned with your values, and also resonates more with your conscious customers because it's not pushy, ethical, and also beautiful. So if you're a regular here, you know that I'm organizing the conversations around the 7 Ps of humane marketing. And if you're new here and this is your first time, welcome. I'm so excited you're here. You may want to download your one-page marketing plan with the 7 Ps of humane marketing in the form of a mandala at humane.marketing/one page, the number one and page. So again, humane.marketing/one page. And with that, with no further ado, let's dive into today's conversation. Hey, Myriam. So good to hang out with you on the podcast. First time.
Yay. I'm so
Yay.
happy to be here, Sarah.
We made it happen, finally. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Really looking forward to talking about partnering with creativity. That's what I called this episode. It's the P of partnership. And yeah, let's talk about partnering with creativity. I think, you are the best person to dive into this topic. And we just kind of talked a little bit before hitting record it. This how much creativity and art brings us, especially in the times that we're living right now.
Right.
So let's start there. How do you feel about art and what do you see with your clients? What it does for them?
Well, we were talking a little bit before coming on about the state of the world, so to speak, right? And I mentioned that art making for me especially has been such a resource, right?
Right.
And the way that I see creativity as a partner, right, and as a support system is that it allows you to express things that you might not either be totally aware need to be expressed, right?
Mhm.
Or that may be hard to express on a verbal level. So it helps you access things that, you may not have any connection to. And once it's on the art piece, then that's when the insight comes or the awareness comes or, new information comes. And often you experience a lot of relief and release at the same time
Yeah.
depending on the kind of art making that you're into.
So it's kind of the subconscious coming into, yeah, the paper or the terracotta or whatever, the papier mâché, whatever you're using. It kind of expresses itself in that form. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly, exactly. And for me in the work that I do, I what I notice with clients is, and in myself, I think it's part of the human condition, so to speak, is that we get in our heads a lot. We do a lot of
Say
thinking and a
that
lot,
again.
yeah, a lot of thinking, a lot of analyzing, we go in circles in our head. And when that happens, we're really disconnected from ourselves and our emotional state and what's happening inside our body. And for me, the way that I see it is like, well, that's where our wisdom is. It's in our body. It's not in our head. We're feeling beings, not thinking beings. So if we get too caught up in our head, that often creates more stress, right? We become more agitated. So that affects our not only our mental health, but our physical health. And we can't think as clearly. And it can just more easily become too much and we get to feel really stuck, right? So when we can get out of our head and into our body a little more, and that's what the art and creative experience does for you, then you can, kind of lower your blood pressure, right? Breathe a little easier. There's like a physiological transformation that happens when you engage with art, from neurotransmitters being released, your body moving into more relaxation, and clarity often comes from that experience.
That's so funny. I had never made that yeah, that relation between embodiment and art. But yeah, it makes so much sense. You're using your hands, or yeah, mainly your hands and your arms probably.
Mhm.
But what you're saying, it's more than that. It's just like you kind of turn off the thinking and just let the feeling come out into the art and the creativity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because again, if we're too overly stressed, and just thinking in loops, which we can all get into, then we're not going to be able to make great decisions. It
Yeah.
really impacts our decision making, our ability to visualize something different for ourselves, and again, we get to feel really stuck. But once we get out of that part of our brain, and into the more sensory brain, then our body transforms immediately. Oftentimes when I'm working with clients, even if we're just doing, some silly doodling, something like that, they immediately feel the relief. I
Hmm.
mean, I've stood in front of a crowd of, over 250 people and had them doodle. And almost every person, had a transformative experience. And many people often give me the same feedback, which is like, oh, I feel so much more relaxed. I feel so much calmer. I feel like I have more clarity. Or it's like, yeah, of course, because when we're in that fight or flight mode, we're not going to be able to think clearly. It's just physiological fact, right?
Yeah.
But we need to be able to get out of that, and art and creativity is a wonderful resource and tool for that.
I wonder if it also brings us back into our, inner child, or like the actual child stage of our
Mhm.
lives where we're just like, oh, there's no agenda, there's no time, it's like, oh, this is just me and my pencils, and I have all the time in the world to do
That's
this.
right. There's no thinking.
There's no thinking, no, or there's thinking, but flow thinking, just like,
Mhm.
oh, this happened and this happened, but not like cognitive structured thinking like we would
Right.
do for our business. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you talk about that, like the cognitive structuring. And I think that that's a lot of the way that we trap ourselves, because we have often unrealistic expectations of ourselves, right? But we're also want everything like perfectly planned out or to know what's coming, and gives us a lot of anxiety to sit in the unknown. And so when you have a creative practice, you get to exercise moving through those challenging emotions, right? So if I put a piece of blank paper in front of someone and their blood pressure goes up, right? Because immediately their thinking brain is saying, but I don't know what to do, and I'm not good at it, and what's going to happen, and what if I mess it up? And these are all things that we say to ourselves every day,
Yeah.
throughout our day with different things. So once they engage with the process without any thought, right? Like just let the paint flow or let the marker move wherever it wants to move, then we get to exercise that muscle of learning to do that.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's again, what comes to mind is school, right? And we don't really learn creativity or creative art at school. We learn cognitive art, maybe, whereas like you have to
Maybe,
color
yes.
within the lines and you have to construct exactly the example of the teacher. Like that's not creativity, right? That's just like, I don't
No,
know
that's
what you call
mimicking.
that. Yeah, mimicking,
It's
exactly.
mimicking, right? So there's no independent thought around that, which is really
Yeah,
interesting, right?
yeah,
Versus a younger child. 'Cause I taught preschool for many years, which is like the 3 to 5 year old range. And what I remember about that age group is that there really was no thought. It was all intuitive.
right,
That the painting is attracting me, right?
right.
And so I'm going to go to the easel and I'm going to put paint on the paper.
Mm,
There was no thinking around that, it
mm-hmm,
was all really intuitive. And when I think about a childlike state, I think about free flow, and I think about curiosity,
mm-hmm,
right? How children are often in a constant state of curiosity. Like, I wonder what that is and how does that work? And let me touch it and let me smell it. And,
right.
all these kinds of
Yeah,
things, really connecting with your sensory being.
yeah, yeah. That's so good. I was just thinking about my mandala and the seven P's, right?
Yes.
And how, yeah, I really wanted to combine the framework with the creativity and with the coloring, and not like also with self-reflection. So while the idea, at least for the 7 Ps of humane marketing with the mandala, is that while you're coloring, you're kind of like free flow thinking about these different areas of your business because you're using your body and your creativity, it doesn't feel so heavy.
That's right.
Does that make sense at all?
No, absolutely. Because
Yeah.
again, I think what people don't often understand and is undervalued is the physiological transformation that occurs, when you start engaging with art making or creativity. So coloring into, your mandala workbook, so to speak, right? That is going to immediately activate the right brain,
Mm,
and it's going to release those neurotransmitters that are very calming, like
right.
dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin, right? And so that physiologically changes your body and makes it easier for you to be able to think clearly. That's right. It doesn't feel as heavy. But
Hmm.
when we sit in like left brain stuff, like the way that typical business planning goes is, goals, and it's very masculine,
Yeah.
right? Structure, what am I going to accomplish? What am I going to produce? And that puts like a lot of pressure. Like even as I'm speaking that, I can feel that my body is getting tighter just talking about it.
Yeah,
Right.
it's this
So
linear process that you
yes.
feel like, oh,
Yeah,
to-do
and it puts a
list
lot of
and
pressure. Yeah, it puts a
yeah.
lot of pressure. And then then we can move into our perfectionism stuff, that it has to be a certain way, and or fear of making a mistake, and again, notice the parallel between that experience and the art making experience, where we can have the exact same sensations and thoughts. What if I mess it up? What if I don't do it right? I was recently at a women's conference, and it's a pretty large conference. It was about 5,500 women there. And I had a booth where I was inviting people to come doodle with me, right? And what I kept really being fascinated by was how many people would either say, oh, no, no, I don't know how, which is like, but it's doodling.
I didn't
Right?
ask you
I
to
didn't
draw
ask you to
Mona
paint like,
Lisa. Yeah.
like a lifelike image of something,
Yeah.
it's just, scribbling around on a piece of paper. Or I would hear something like, well, I don't know, I'm not really good at that,
Yeah.
or I don't know if I can, and as I was, guiding the women there, explaining what I'm explaining to you, like, hey, right now you're just in your head, and this is going to help you get out of there and start flowing. Some of the women were like, I can't believe how much I'm in my head. I literally can't get started.
Right.
Right. It was like, wow, this is
Yeah, because they're
amazing.
thinking, oh, how do
Yep.
I start the
Is
doodling?
there a right way? Is there a
Yeah.
wrong way? What
Yeah.
again, the same thoughts that we often have, as we're moving through our business and in life, right? What if I get it wrong? What if I mess it up? What will people think? All these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And when they would engage with it, every single time, the reporting back was, wow,
Mm.
I feel so much different. And I'm going to work on this because I can see that I'm spending too much time in my thinking brain.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. In my upcoming book, Business Like We're Human, I talk about this concept of spaciousness and
Mm.
how if we healed our relationship to work and kind of like created, because in the Industrial Revolution, we created this myth that we are basically working bees, right? It's like we
Yeah.
work every day, 9 to 5, well, at least weekdays. And that's how we define ourselves as human, is by our job title very often. And there is no spaciousness. People, run around with the busyness badge, and of course they don't doodle. Of course they don't have time to doodle.
Right.
And so basically what I'm hearing is the reason why people don't make time to doodle is because they don't create spaciousness in their calendar, and they feel like that their definition of success, they only get there if they work, 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 right? And
Mhm.
so even doodling feels like a waste of time. I'm wasting my
Absolutely.
time, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and it's a little bit too like how art and creativity is perceived, right? There's often this misconception that, A, it's for kids,
Yeah,
right? And two, there's just no value to it. Like what is the point? If you can't draw something lifelike, then what would be the point of doing that? And
right.
so my message is, let me explain to you what happens to your brain and your body, and how that transforms and how that
Right.
creates spaciousness in your mind, right? In your
Right.
heart, in your body, and that how that then translates out, into the work that you're doing. And,
Mhm.
I love that you're talking about like your relationship with your business, because when I work with clients around their business, creating imagery about your business is actually extremely powerful,
Mm.
right? Because
Yeah.
now you are in a relationship with it if you
Mhm.
externalize it in that way. So whatever, image comes to mind when you think about your business, how would you want to imagine it, right?
Mhm.
As
Mhm.
an image. And it changes because again, our business exists in our head or in how much money we're making or how many clients we have or, et cetera. But when it's this physical, tangible thing that you can look at and touch, now you can have a relationship with your
Mm.
business.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. I think of it maybe like I would probably draw myself if I thought about my business, because to me it's really just an extension of myself nowadays. Hasn't always been like that, but nowadays I just feel like if I think about business like we're human, it's just an extension with myself of myself. And so I guess what I would be working with in this drawing is, well, what's my relationship with myself, right?
Mm,
Because if I am my business and it's an extension of myself, well, then what's my relationship with myself? And
right.
yeah, you can get into really fascinating conversations right there.
Exactly. Exactly. And if you make it a regular practice,
Right,
to check in with yourself and your business in that way, again, there's just a deeper connection. It's not so surface or task oriented.
right. Yeah. Yeah, so tell me about some other tools you're using with your clients. Like what do you help? There's another line that I got from your website. You help women rediscover their wild. You know,
Yes.
like that. Also, of course, what it makes me think of is, yeah, well, in relation with you, like lots of colors and just like, yeah, this creative artist, right? That's what
Mhm.
it makes me think.
Vibrancy.
Yeah.
Vibrancy is the word
Hmm.
that comes up for me. Well, the concept of the wild woman, it's related to an archetype by Dr. Clarissa Estes Pintos, and she's an author, and she talked about the wild woman archetype. And what the acronym that I came up with around the wild woman is W stands for waking up to your life. So to me, that means taking responsibility for yourself, right? No one's going to come in and rescue you. You
Mm-hmm.
have to do the work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then the I is for ignite your inner knowing. And that's where the creativity comes in. Like there's wisdom inside you. You don't need to constantly look for it outside of yourself, because that's something that I notice with women, as they're constantly looking for external validation or, oh, I need a coach for this. I need a teacher for that. And it's like, well, sometimes that is really helpful. And other times you're just not trusting yourself.
Right.
So the creativity, is something that connects you to your inner wise woman,
Mm-hmm.
right? And helps you build that confidence to keep going. And
Right.
then the L is for love yourself fiercely, which is a huge element. Like that needs to be our baseline, for living, is learning to love ourselves like we do other people. So I often invite my clients to think about someone that they deeply care about, somebody that means a lot to them, right? And how that feels, when they think about that person, how they feel about that person, and what needs to happen to then turn that same kind of loving energy, towards themselves. Because we tend to be so hard on ourselves, right? So learning to be self-compassionate and be loving and kind to yourself is a huge part of business success,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then the D is to dare to be unapologetically you. Like you're the only person that you can be, right? But oftentimes there's so much comparison that's going on. Like, oh, wow, look at Sarah. She's doing a lot because, look at this class or this post that she put up. And so I gotta be like Sarah, and it's like, no, I can't be like Sarah because I'm me,
Mhm.
right? I can have Sarah inspire me, right? Like that's okay, right? But we're constantly doing this comparison. It's like, well, you can only be yourself, and you have to learn to live with who you are, right? Live with yourself. And when all those aspects are addressed, then that makes being in life feel more successful, but definitely in your business, right? Because again, in business, we go up and we go down, up and down, and backwards and forwards, right? And sideways. And that can really impact, our mental state, how we see ourselves, how we think about ourselves. But if we can always go back to, I'm okay, I'm a worthy person, right? And be kind to yourself as you move through all of that, then you can keep moving forward with a lot more ease. Otherwise,
Yeah.
again, we'll just get stuck in that.
Yeah, exactly. You just look for the exterior confirmation that you are good enough, where it's
Hmm.
all inside of us, right? But you need to just
Exactly.
find it. Yeah, this acronym would have fit really nicely also with marketing because everything you shared applies to marketing as well, right? So yeah, tell us a little bit about your marketing story because you attended the marketing like we're human program back in can't remember when, but a while ago.
Yes.
And then I just watched you bloom and like be yourself and bring all that creativity into your marketing. So was that, yeah, just share a little bit, like because I remember in the beginning you thought it was hard because marketing to you just seemed like this thing that we have to do a certain way,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. It felt like a task,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And I think that that's probably been the biggest transformation, is that I see it more as an expression
right.
now, right?
Yeah,
Before it was like, well, you have to do this, and you have to have a website, and you have to post, and and I don't function that well as a highly sensitive person. It's like that didn't feel good to me,
right,
in my body. Like that's not how I want to approach my business. I don't want it to feel like a task,
right.
right? And so there were often times when I felt like I was doing stuff just for the sake of doing it, you
Mm-hmm,
know,
mm-hmm.
and that didn't feel good. It didn't feel
Right,
authentic, it
right.
didn't feel right for me and my body. So once I started thinking about marketing, and again, creating, imagery around marketing, around my business, how do I want to be in it, that kind of a thing, I started to really think about it more as an expression of myself,
Yeah.
right? And how do I want to express myself in the world?
You should do a post like before and after, because
Oh, yes.
I remember your post from before where it's like, oh yeah, this is a marketing post, right? Where
Yeah.
you basically and like everybody does, and like I did too. It's like, oh, you have to create this certain marketing post, you get a Canva template, and here you go, here's my message, right? And then, the after is now like you doodling or your latest art project, or yeah, it just really feels like, oh, there is Miriam. She's being herself, right? Yeah.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
feels much more connected and much more authentic.
Yeah. Of course, people who are listening might be thinking, oh, yeah, of course, she is, a creative and an art therapist and working with women like that. But what I always say is like, bring more of you. So maybe you're doing, like I just shared with you, I signed up for a pottery class. Like, that is not part of my business. I'm not a pottery teacher, but it would make a really fun post, to share about this pottery class. And
Mhm.
so it doesn't always have to be business oriented what we're sharing, and that creativity can really come into our marketing as well.
No, I agree. And, just on a little side note, because I think that, people look at me and think, well, she's a creative. So, and again, that's really kind of a put down towards themselves, well, but I'm not,
I'm
right?
not, yeah.
And so my backstory is that I didn't go into the field of art therapy because I was an artist. I never practiced art. I worked with kids, and I wanted to continue to work with kids in a therapeutic way. And I thought, well, that's their language. It's art, right? And so art therapy seems like a really good fit. But the biggest transformation for me was that, in my arrogance at the time, over 20 years ago now, when they, invited me into the master's program, but also said, yes, but you need 12 units of art, I was slightly offended, because I thought, well, why do I need to do that? Like, I'm just helping other people, which, I always reflect back on that and think, wow, where was I
Mm,
in my journey that I couldn't even consider, right, that would be for me.
right.
And so the gift came from learning to use art in as a tool for healing and wellness and self-development. I didn't go to art classes to learn how to draw a specific thing or technique, or that isn't how I learned to make art.
Right.
And so even my personal development as an artist, right? Like I'm still working on really owning that title, right? Because of all of the conditioning around art,
Right. Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, you don't have an MFA, or you can't draw lifelike things. And it's like, right, but none of that has anything to do with anything. From my perspective, we're all artists. We all have the ability to create and express, because that's really all it is, right? And I heard a term recently, a little saying that said, um, expression is the opposite of depression, right? And I was like, ooh,
That's deep.
yes, yes, right? Because depression is often we're holding emotion, our body's kind of saturated,
Hmm.
with unprocessed emotion. But if you use the art process to express, then things get lighter,
Mm,
in your body. So for anybody out there who doesn't think they're a creative, or an artist, I'm here to tell you, yes, you are, right? You
mm,
just have to allow yourself to explore and experiment. And like I said before, be curious and
hmm.
just see what happens. If you put some paint on a piece of paper, let's see what happens.
Yeah, and it really is like art has this, yeah, connotation of like you need to study it
Hmm.
and all of that. But creativity is a different term to me. It's like, yeah, you can
Yes.
be creative for 2 minutes, right? It doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take studying. It doesn't take anything. It doesn't take like all these special tools. Like you talk about doodling, you can just take your pencil to doodle. You don't even need color pencils or
Nope,
anything
you
else.
don't need
So,
anything fancy. And it's good to actually differentiate between creativity and artistic expression, right? Because
mm,
creativity, its baseline definition is problem solving.
mm, yeah.
That's all it is. Creativity
Hmm.
is problem solving, thinking outside the box, coming up with new ideas. It's like, well, you do that every day, all day long. Every single human does that every day, right? But artistic expression, right, is using a medium to express those ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the difference, right?
Mm,
So creativity, again, it gets kind of interlaced with artistic expression, but when you think about it, in that bare bones definition, no, it's just imagination. It's just thinking about a new idea. It's just problem solving, right? It's like, oh, well, I do that. That's what most people will say. It's like, right, exactly. So you are therefore creative.
right. But does that mean like I like the artistic expression because maybe that means that we're putting it out there rather
Mhm.
than because you can be creative in your head, right?
Mhm.
Where we want to get out of our heads, and so maybe the expression
It's the expression. That's
is
right.
needed. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because at some point, as you're problem solving through something, or if you get a new idea, you're going to have like, aha, and you're going to execute something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who knows what that will be, but something's going to happen from that.
Mm,
And so artistic expression is just, I think, setting more intention and more consciousness around that expression.
right. Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful. So what would you say to people who are listening who are kind of like these women that you met at the stand? It's like, oh, I don't know where to start or I can't do it. Like, yeah, what's an easy first step?
Well, an easy first step is to grab a piece of paper. And like you said, it doesn't have to be like the writing tool doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could be just a regular old pencil or pen. If you want to have a little bit more play, you can add some color to that, right? And just move it around the page. That's it, right?
Seems
Like
so simple,
I
right?
know we live in a world where there's either straight lines or curved lines,
Mm,
right? It's that simple.
Mm.
And so to move the pen or pencil around in whatever way it wants to move, up, down, straight across, wiggly, spirally, it doesn't matter, right? And one of the things that people will notice if they engage in that practice is that the head was going to turn on, right? It's going to say, I don't know, or this is dumb, or what am I doing? All of these things that, go through our head. And slowly that voice will start to quiet,
Mm.
right? Because the other part of the brain is going to start to get activated, and you're going to start to notice, how that feels differently. So it's really quite simple, right? It doesn't have to be overcomplicated at all. No one's asking you to pull out a water palette or get a canvas out, or, even take a pottery class like you're saying. It's like, no, you don't have to do anything like that. It would be really fun if you did, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. It's just moving stuff around. And I had somebody say that she called herself now a born again doodler
Yeah.
because and so many people will say that, well, I remember I would get in trouble for doodling though,
Yeah.
right? When I was
That's
a kid. And
cool.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I know that's because there's a misconception,
Right.
around doodling and how powerful it is, and what's happening in your brain around it. And
Mm.
how actually for a lot of people, it helps you retain more information
Right.
if you're
Yeah.
doodling like at a meeting or during a workshop or, something like that.
Yeah.
Like it's actually going to help you.
Yeah. I should have done that while we were talking. I should have, and then I could have held it up. Ah, we need to
Should have done
record it
a
again.
quick mini activity.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
still time, Sarah.
Yeah. So definitely just try it out. And I like how you say, start to notice the left brain. First, they will want to rebel and say, this is just stupid, why you're doing this.
Yeah.
And then it switches over to the right brain and it's just like
Yeah.
calming down. And
You
yeah.
start to feel the flow in your body. You kind of start
Mhm.
to let go a little bit,
Mm.
and again, it's such a great practice to manage some of the thoughts that can come in and interfere, so as I'm moving somebody through the process, the inner critic is going to want to come in and say, oh, that's not a very good flower, or that doesn't look like X, Y, or Z. And, my job is to say, do you notice that?
Right.
Notice how the critic wants to come in,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
how can we manage that? And again, this is just a muscle building around managing that voice.
Yeah. So you're basically helping women tap into that right brain and creative power so that it then, yeah, I guess helps them with their business in order to keep going. Like you said before, it's like, well, we need that resilience. And where do we get resilience? Is going inwards and using tools like artistic expression.
Exactly. Because some of the main obstacles, that women encounter in business are things like perfectionism,
Mhm.
having too high of an expectation, having the inner critic constantly be, in your ear, things like
Right,
that.
right,
And there's not a lot that we can do about the inner critic, like in terms of like that's just part of the human condition, it has a purpose, believe it or not, but it doesn't have to dominate.
right.
It definitely won't be helpful if it's in charge, right?
Mm,
Running the show. So every time that you engage in a creative practice, and make a little doodle, make some art in some way, and that voice comes up, like the more you move through that, the better you get at addressing that in everyday life.
mm, yeah, beautiful.
It's empowering.
It really is. And it reminds me of the book, and the quote where he says the right brainers will rule the world, I think. Um, and
Yes,
it really, it really, I really feel like this is the paradigm we're shifting to. We like look where we're at. We have all this left brain power, and yet we can't solve the planet's problem. And
no,
so we need to start imagining new ideas. And what does that need? Creativity, right? We need to
exactly.
think outside the box. Well, yeah, yeah, we need more
Yeah,
art.
and I think that's a good point. I mean, we have and continue to operate so much in that left brain and kind of masculine energy. And my observation, in the work that I do is that people are really stressed out.
Yeah.
The
Horrible.
stress is higher than ever,
Yeah.
and it's like, how's that working? Honestly, like be honest with yourself. How's it really working for you to exist constantly in that left brain kind of masculine space of doing and producing and trying to
Mm.
be perfect and, doing things a certain way or the quote unquote the right way, et cetera. It's like, if you really check in with your body, you're probably really stressed.
Yeah.
And that's
Like
not good
so
for you.
often they're so stressed they don't even know what it's like anymore to not be stressed.
Yes.
So the body forgot what it's like to be calm.
Mhm.
And probably at the beginning it can be stressful to do these doodlings because it's so calm, right? It's like, oh my God, this is so, yeah, this feels
I don't
weird.
even know what to do.
Yeah. So yeah, we need you. We need your help in this transition. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really powerful tool that's often underestimated.
And it's, it can be free. I mean, like, look, we all have, pencils
We
and
all have a pen and pencil.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it does not have to be fancy.
Beautiful. All right, but do please share with people where they can find out how to work with you if they need some help in this transition.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
they're looking for an alternative way
Yeah.
to work, right?
Yeah.
Because, what I notice in the coaching business is that there's a lot of focus and emphasis on mindset work,
Mm,
which is great.
mm,
Mindset's really important. But unless you get your body to buy in,
mm,
going to be really hard to make that shift, right? So the
mhm.
whole body
Yeah.
approach is really important. And people can find me, on the web and at my website, myriammartinezcoaching.com. I'm also on LinkedIn and Instagram if people want to look for me there, right? But oftentimes the people that come to me are looking for an alternative way. They've
Mm.
done a lot of, kind of left brain work, goal setting,
Yeah, it's like they're
mindset
they're like,
work,
I tried
etc.
everything. I need something else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking for something else. Yeah, I'm looking for a more expansive way, I
Mm.
would say to exist in general, not just to, improve my business, or anything like that, but just a way of being.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Kind of similar with humane marketing, it's like I
Mm,
tried everything. I want something different.
that's right.
Yeah. And I
Which is
just
why you and I are connected.
exactly, yeah. And I just grabbed your card on my desk, and I don't know if I ever told you, the peace
Oh,
card that I
yes,
sent you.
yes, yes.
Did I tell you that the Business Like We're Human book is based on this peace symbol?
No.
Oh, I forgot to tell you that. Yeah. I was like, oh, I need, how I had the mandala for the Marketing
Yes.
for Human book. And so I'm like, I need a new visual, right? For this third book. And I looked at your card. I'm like, that's it. We need inner peace so that we
Mhm.
can bring outer change. And so that's what the Business Like We're Human book is based on, is your picture that you
Oh
sent
my
me.
gosh, that's so
I'm like,
exciting.
right? Yeah. So yeah, peace sign, more peace and more creativity and art. That's what,
Right.
yeah.
And bringing out onto the world. Otherwise, we're just producing.
Yeah. Yeah. We're just producing. Yeah, that's powerful.
Mhm.
Well, thanks so much for this wonderful conversation, Miriam. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you too, Sarah.
Thanks so much for watching and being part of a generation of marketers who cares for yourself, for your clients, and for the planet. We really are change makers before we are marketers. So go ahead, be the change you want to see in the world. And I hope to see you again next week. Take care.